Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Arch with Imran. I'm Imran, I hope you guys are having a great day, and in today's Photoshop tutorial, we're going to be doing a video on layer masks. Now, first I'm going to explain why I think everyone should be using layer masks, what makes them so beneficial, and then I'm going to show you guys everything you need to know about using them in Photoshop and how you can edit them and change them. Now, really quickly, if you guys are new to the channel, hope you guys find the videos helpful. If you do, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new uploads. There's also a link to my Discord in the description. If you guys have any issues or questions regarding any of the stuff in the tutorials, please feel free to put them on there, and I'm happy to help out and try walk you through any issues you're having. So let's get into it. So firstly, what are layer masks and why should we be using them? Now, I've created a simple gradient on Photoshop, and I'm going to show you guys the way we can utilize layer masks to get a really clean workflow and to make our work look great. So the layer mask button is this one in the corner, 5 from the right. If you click on it, you'll get this on your layer. Now, what a layer mask is it simply allows us to mask out parts of the layer using black and white. So if I get a circle and I decide to fill it with black, you will then see it has cut it out of our image. Now, the reason we want to use layer masks and they're so helpful is because it's something called a non-destructive workflow. Layer masks do not edit your image, all they do is mask it out. So if I was to do a circle and cut it out using backspace, I can no longer get the data in that circle back unless I undo it. So say I use it for one of my renders. In the future, if I want to manipulate something or change it, you can't get any of that data you've deleted back. I'm going to undo that. And now the benefit is, with the layer masks, you can undo all of the changes you make. So if I hold Shift and click on the layer mask button here, I can hide the layer mask and we have all of our data back to normal. You can also choose to remove the layer mask and you will have your layer back to normal and you won't have lost any data throughout your workflow. This is really good for stuff that you might be altering and changing, and in the future you might want to move it or shift it. It allows you to undo whatever you've done, no matter how far into the future it is. So now I'm going to show you guys some functions that you can use layer mask for, and then I'm going to explain some real world application for why you may want to use it in a project. As I've already mentioned, this button is the layer mask. This will apply a blank layer mask to your layer. If I click this, layer masks are in white and black. White means that the layer is shown, and black means the layer isn't shown. Now, what you can do is you can get a brush, and if you change to black, you can draw directly on this layer mask and it will hide anything in the layer mask. Although you might think we're drawing over it, we're not. If I go onto black and fill the background, you can see that we have simply just hidden the area of this layer, and we are seeing what is below it. And now we can also create a layer mask while we have a selection. So if I undo all of this, and I go on here and I make this selection, we can also hit the layer mask button while we have a selection active, and these are called marching ants. These marching ants show the area in which you have got selected, and if we click layer mask, it will hide everything but that circle. This works both ways, and there's also a number of tricks we can use to change this. If you click on the layer mask, you can hit Ctrl-I, which will invert the colors, and it will switch it so we have the opposite. You can do it again and again as much as you want. Now, if you have noticed, we have a chain symbol next to the image. Now what this is this locks the size. If I click on this layer and go Ctrl-T to free transform, I can scale down the layer. And as you will see, my layer mask will scale with it. But what we can do is, if we want to undo this, we can click this button and the sizes are no longer locked. So what this means is the layer mask will always stay where it is and it won't resize, but we can still resize the layer we have. So if I hit Ctrl-T again, we can now resize our layer, and you can see the layer mask will stay in the same place. Now you might be thinking, how is this useful? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert this mask again, so we can only see what is inside the layer mask. And now we can go back to our layer and we can use the move tool, And as you will see, we can move the gradient around, but the layer mask will stay in the same place. This is really great because say you want to do a gradient or a material, you can mask out an area and have a texture behind it. Therefore, you can move the texture around to get the best area showing that you want. Another thing you can also do is if you click onto the layer mask itself, you can also move the layer mask as well. And the reason this is cutting off is because our image is not bigger than the layer, but we can go back to our gradient layer and move it about as well. So I've already shown you the shortcut to invert the selection. Let's show you a few more. Number one, I'm going to hold Alt and I'm going to click on the layer mask. What this will do is it will show the layer mask over the screen in black and white. And to undo it, you simply just click off the layer. Another really useful one is if you hold Shift and click on it, it will hide the layer mask. As you'll see, it gets an X over it, and again we can shift click it to undo it. This can allow you to see where the layer is. So for example, if your image is getting slightly cut off, you can hold Shift on here and see where your image ends. And finally, the one last one I'm going to show you is we're going to hit Control, hold down Control on the keyboard, and we're going to click the layer mask again, and what it'll do is it will make a selection with the area that is in your layer mask. This is also useful if you want to cut things out or you want to drag it somewhere else and use that selection somewhere else. Now there's one last thing I want to show you about layer mask before showing you some real world application, and that is when you click on the layer mask, if you see in your properties tab, you'll get this come up. You can change the density of the layer mask, which blurs the black and white, and then you can also feather the edge. So this is really useful, say you have a plant or something, and I'll show you this in a minute. You want to feather the edges so it's a bit less harsh. You can turn the feather up and it will blur the harsh edge of the layer mask. So let's show you guys some real world application. Now while I advise getting images with white backgrounds for when you're doing final edits and rendering, you may have an image that has a background that you really need to get rid of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a tool that I've shown you in a previous video, and that is the Select Color Range. What I can do is I can turn this down and I can click on this icon right here. And what will allow me to do is it will allow me to select everything of that color. So I click here and I'm changing it to none so it shows me the image, and then what we're going to do is we're going to change it back to grayscale. You can turn the fuzziness up and it will increase the amount of things in that selection. Now, once we have majority of the background selected, we can click on this color picker and go add, and we can add more colors to the selection. There we go. I'm going to turn the fuzziness down a tiny bit to make sure as much as the plant is black as possible. And that's looking pretty good to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit OK, and now this should create a selection of this. What I'm also going to do is, because we've selected the background, you can also do Control Shift I to invert a selection. So I'm going to hold down Control Shift and I, and as you'll see, I should now have the plant selected. I'm going to click on the layer mask, and we have the background removed. Now as you can see, there's still slight bits of blurriness in here, so we can increase the feather and just blur the background a bit nicer. There you go. Now, as I've mentioned, the benefit to this is if you ever, for whatever reason, need to get your image back or the background, you can simply just hold Shift and hide it, or you can simply delete it. This will stay like this and it doesn't use too much data, so your file sizes shouldn't be too big. Okay, so now I'm going to show you guys one more practical example of how you can use this in your architecture workflow. I've gone onto Google and I got a simple photo of a floor plan, and this, I'm going to show you the technique of how I put textures on my floor plan in my video tutorial. Now, if you want to watch that, there's a link in the card and you'll see me using this exact same technique. So, what I've done is I've gone onto Google and I've got a floor plan. I have also now got a wood texture. If you want to Google and search seamless wood texture or any other texture, make sure you put seamless, and what it should do is when you tile them, they should match up perfectly. Now, to tile these, what I do is I hold Alt on my keyboard and I can drag them across. Now what this does is it puts it on a new layer, And what we're going to do is we're going to go right click, merge down. And this will merge both of those textures onto one floor. I'm going to do this a couple more times just to increase my area. And now we have a wooden floor texture big enough for our room. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to hide this layer. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to rename it so we can keep track of all our layers so we don't get mixed up. Now, this room here is the room we want to have our wood texture on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the magic wand tool to select the room. Make sure I'm on the floor plan layer, and I'm going to click on this room, and you should see it fill a selection of marching ants around the room floor. We're going to go back to our wood texture and turn it on, and make sure we're going to unselect for now because our wood texture does not cover the floor. So we're going to make sure our wooden texture covers the entire room we want. We're going to hide it again, and we're going to go back to our magic wand tool, shortcut W, and we're going to click in this room, and we're going to turn our wood texture back on. Now as you can see, all of the wood texture covers the room, and what we're going to do is we're going to hit the layer mask button. And now you can see we filled the wooden floor to this room. You can now do this for each of your rooms, each of your materials, and you can get a really nice textured floor plan. But why not just cut this out? Why should we use a layer mask? Well, as I mentioned before, we can unlock the layer mask, and when we move or scale it, they will no longer be attached together. So we can move the wooden floor plan as needed. Yeah. So guys, hopefully you can see how useful layer masks are and why you should be using them. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments or in the Discord, and I hope you guys found this video helpful. As always, please remember to like, comment and subscribe, and hopefully I'll catch you guys in another video. Take it easy.